Electric Jam Podcast.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to the Electric Jam Podcast. I'm Christopher, and I'm here with Richard, as usual. If you don't know who we are, check out our website in the description of the podcast. Electric Jam has guitar reviews, gear testing, and tons of info on recording. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing good. Very good.
Very good.
Yeah, well as can be expected.
Before we got started, Richard is apparently getting into Chicken Pickin.
Yeah, big time.
And, you know, it's funny because country guitar, if you learn, I mean, it sounds very basic and it sounds very neutered when you listen to like mainstream country. But if you go back to the older people like Johnny Cash and some of that, you know, 70s country, those guys were shredding.
Yeah,
it's
big
just,
time.
They don't have distortion, you know? So it doesn't sound like it's shredding, but try to play some of that stuff. And a lot of it is, you were saying you were doing hybrid picking with it, where you use the pick and then one of your fingers. Yeah. And that's a hard technique to get down, man. But once you do, that's how John 5 is so fast.
Yeah, well, I've been listening a lot of Mastodon, their older stuff. Like Leviathan and Blood Mountain, and because I haven't listened to it for ages, and I kind of just put the new album on, like the latest one, Hushed and Grim, last week, and had a good listen to it again because I hadn't really listened to it for ages, and I did really like it when it came out, and I still do really like it. But then I was kind of like, oh, I'm going to listen to the other ones, like Blood Mountain, and my favorite is Leviathan. I think that's probably like one of the greatest metal albums of all time, and it's just Brent Hinds' guitar playing. He does so much on those early records. I mean, he does a lot on the new ones too, but on the early records, it's way more integral to the overall like song structure of his picking technique and chicken picking basically, but just in a metal context. And
well, he does it with a banjo too.
He's a banjo player, isn't he? That plays guitar. That's kind of his shtick. He's like, well, I play the banjo and now I play guitar. So I think he kind of cut his teeth on the banjo. And I have like a guitar downstairs, which is an acoustic in the kitchen, and that's the one I play like 99% of the time. And I never play with a pick. I always play with my fingers. So when I play with the pick upstairs, I kind of like a while ago I just started using my fingers as well as the pick, which is the hybrid picking. And and then just trying to get the speed up, because chicken picking's like, I think what mine would be called, it's not really chicken picking. It's more like chicken poking at the moment because it's not that fast. It's like boop, boop, boop. Whereas the picking's like tick, 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 tick. So. Well,
just like with shredding, though, you got to kind of gradually bump up the BPM. You know, you start kind of slow just to get your fingers going in the right kind of motions. And then you bump it up a little bit and you bump it up a little bit. The next thing you know, you're going really fast. And yeah, Brent Hinds and John 5 are both outstanding lead guitar players. And if you watch them, they both hybrid pick a whole
massively.
lot.
It's just like that's like the core component of Brent's style. I think Mastodon too, they wouldn't sound that way if he wasn't doing what he was doing with the hybrid picking. It's like a whole kind of tonic to the music.
Well, I mean, not that Bill doesn't write really good riffs. I think he writes the really good, like, heavy galloping stuff. Like, on the song I was just talking about, Divinations, off of Crack the Sky, it starts out with a banjo. And, but then you could tell Bill, like, definitely wrote those verse riffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's like the rhythm guy. He's just like the big, fast, the kind of traditional kind of riff.
Yeah.
And I think Brent kind of adds the salsa. Spicy salsa.
I like Brent's voice too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Brent's voice.
It's like a southern rock kind of drawl to it.
That's why I prefer old Mastodon. Like, that's why I prefer it. Leviathan is my favorite album, and one of the main reasons for it is because he sings a lot on it. And his, like, the best song on I think they've ever done is Hearts Alive. It's absolutely fantastic. It has every element that makes Mastodon so good. It's got like
I agree.
acoustic, it's got the prog, it's got the kind of sea squall at the beginning. It sounds like it's got salty, dirty sound to it. The lyrics are great, the melodies are great, the singing's great. And I'm kind of like in the very small minority of people who I don't really like Braun's singing. And I've said this before, and it's a subjective thing because like the most popular songs that they do are all on Spotify anyway, are all songs that Braun sings. But I'm massive. I think Brent is the best. I mean, Troy is great. He's really, really, really good, and he's always been good, and he's really come into his own on the last album in terms of his technique and delivery and style. He's so polished now compared to how he was like 10 years ago. It's unbelievable. It's like a different singer, but in a good way, not like the Mars Volta where it's kind of he sounds completely different, but not in a good way. But Brent,
yeah, I agree. We're going to interrupt each other this entire conversation. But no, I was going to say, when you were talking about Mastodon last week, I think, I went back this past week and listened to Leviathan and Crack the Sky and a little bit of Blood Mountain. Going back and listening to Troy back then, he was just kind of shouting.
Yeah.
You know? Like he was hitting notes, but it was more like shouting, where Brent was more of the singer. Yeah, now his technique is completely changed. I think he sounds a little bit like Ozzy Osbourne sometimes.
The drummer.
Like without the accent. No, well, Braun does too, but Troy, the bassist, I think he has a little bit of a Ozzy.
He's kind of really, he's got like a very good baritone, hasn't he? He's very low end, but he's rather than, the way it's developed is he's gone from effectively just shouting in key to he's now actually singing like a proper vocalist. He's using his diaphragm and he's projecting and he's getting, all hitting lots of different kind of notes, like even some quite high ones, well, mid-range to high.
For him, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference. He's really, out of all of them, he's improved the most in terms of vocal work. But like with Brent, I just love his voice. I think that's why I love West End Motel. I absolutely love that band. Purely because it's his guitar playing and he sings a lot. And it's not heavy. It's like kind of like his other, like kind of accessible pop country, kind of tongue-in-cheek, Ween-esque kind of band. And they're great. Like literally every single person I showed them to, they're like, how have I not heard of these? They're so good.
Yeah, same. I try to turn people on to all of their side projects and stuff, but I'm really surprised
he hasn't got like just him like him with an acoustic guitar and singing would be great. I literally can't believe that he hasn't done that yet, because I would listen to that in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
with some
I would
banjo
too.
And some bluegrass kind of vibe going on. It'd be great. I mean, that's kind of what West End Motel is, but
but like a more focused, like acoustic blues.
Maybe he will. I mean, he's like 50.
Yeah, maybe he will.
So they're not going to be doing Mastodon forever. So there's probably going to be a chance for that to happen. But yeah, no, Chicken Pickin. If you can't do it, learn how to do it, because it's fun and it's not like shredding. Because the thing with me, I'm not interested in shredding at all. Like I just don't like it. I never have done. I don't like listening to it. I'm a metalhead and I don't mind it, but I'm more of a kind of like, I like riffs, I like rhythm, I like something I can like nod my head to, something with a groove. I don't just like this. It's like it's just to me. It's just the guitarist having more fun than I am doing it than I am listening to it. But with Chicken Pickin and like
now too,
and that kind of stuff, it's got like a swagger to it that's not like shredding, even though it's as hard and sometimes as fast. But it's got a rhythm that obviously is derived from blues that kind of just gets your kind of foot stomping, and that's kind of what I like. Whereas you don't get that with shredding. Shredding's just it's kind of a bit soulless. Whereas Chicken Pickin and that kind of playing and hybrid picking, it kind of has more of a natural rhythm to it, and it lends itself better to rhythm, and in the context of a song as well. So yeah, that's just my kind of take on it.
Well, if you want to hear some really amazing, and I just came across this not too long ago, some really amazing fingerstyle picking, go back and listen to old Dolly Parton. Especially like Jolene, the isolated guitar track on Jolene. That's amazing. Like that's a lot of dexterity, and you think it's just chords when you listen to it, but no, it's not.
No, she's all over the place on that one.
I don't think it was her that played it on the recording. I think it was somebody else. I think she tried to get it right like 10 times or something.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I think the producer stepped in and played that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the actual album.
Yeah, I don't know much about, because country's not. It's not really a thing in the UK. Like country music, I know it's a big deal in America, but in the UK, it's, we had like Shania Twain, but that was about it. But I don't even think she'd be considered country. I don't know, but it's like we don't really have it here. So, but whereas it's like a whole cultural thing in America, isn't it? It's like
Well, especially where I'm from,
the biggest genre of music going, but it's like domestic superstars. Because they're probably big in Japan as well, because everyone's big there. But in the UK, country music's not. I don't even think it's a thing. I think some people listen to it, but it's not something you'll ever see. You'll ever hear in a pub or a bar or anything like that, really. So we just
that's really weird, because I would think.
But the music scene here is quite weird anyway. So it always has been. We've always had it's kind of gravitates more towards kind of like rock and pop, and then like rock pop together.
Like Blur.
Like Blur, Oasis, but then that was kind of the heyday. It's gone a bit rubbish now. There's not really any. It's gone kind of taken on the sort of X Factor, karaoke, pop idol kind of model now, where it's just a personality who also happens to be a singer, and they have music that you can sort of listen to, and it's not very good. So that's kind of the way it's kind of gone now. There's not really any. I mean, there's plenty of great like underground artists and bands in the UK as always, but the mainstream radio, like you put the radio on in the UK, there's not much choice. Like Radio 6 is good for kind of eclectic stuff and underground stuff, but mainstream radio, like we have like Radio 1, is just it's like a migraine. The whole thing, it's literally like a migraine. The music, the people, the talking, then there's adverts on all the other stations, and yeah, the radio sucks. But
that's the way it is here too. I'm outside of Atlanta, but the closer I get to Atlanta, the better the music gets. Because you're getting closer to a big city and you got more choices. But where I physically live, there's not much. And then the one country station that we have is all of that new country stuff, which, I mean, I grew up in the South, and we grew up on like Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton and stuff like that. And to hear this new country stuff, it's like offensive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Florida Georgia Line. If you've ever heard of Florida Georgia Line, they like rap.
Right.
To country. And there's like 808s, like 808 drum machines booming. But then there's a banjo and a slide guitar, and they're rapping about mud on their trucks. And if you've never seen it before, you should watch it, because if you don't know anything about country music and you see that as your first
Well, I do know about country music. I do kind of by proxy of listening to, being interested in guitarists like Brent Hinds and stuff, and watching him talk about his playing and his influences and things like that, and West End Motel. And there's some My Morning Jacket they were a bit country when they came out, a little bit, I guess. Not
a little more, bluesy, kind of bluesy
kind of, but they have like a kind of country element to them. But yeah, no, I definitely won't be checking out that band you just talked about, because that sounds like a combination of all the things I hate the most in the world.
Oh, it's awful. Oh, it's terrible. I'll send it to you. It
just sounds like it's music done by a label. Like, how can we combine some popular genres? There's lots of kids in the South, and they like hip hop, and we're a country label. Well, what can we do?
How do we get these white kids?
Yeah, how do we combine Insane Clown Posse with country music? Can it be done? Yeah, makeup, trucks, mud, rap, 808s.
Yeah, that's it. And people.
It sounds awful. It sounds awful. I don't want to hear it. So please don't send it to me.
I'm still sending it to you. But yeah, our news today was supposed to be about NAMM 2024, and anyone who's been in the music game long enough, you know that NAMM happens twice a year. It happens once in January, and then it happens in the summertime, generally around July 18th, 19th, usually that second week in July. And this year, they're not doing it. And I'm not sure if they didn't do it last year or not, but I had planned on going, and I was looking into it, and there's something called NAMM Next, which is like, I guess, one of those hotel-wide conventions, and a lot of brands are going to be there, but it's not the trade show.
Right.
And after last year's main NAMM event, well, this year's main NAMM event in California, I think NAMM might be going away. And you texted me last night and you said, please tell me it's not influencers. I got bad news for you.
Oh, no.
I think it's influencers, because why would you go and physically set up a booth, especially if you're a company like ESP, Schecter, or Ibanez, where you have like 50 guitars that you're releasing this year that are brand new models, and you have to have all of that square footage. And I looked into it, and like a 10 by 10 booth is like $400 a day or something. So
yeah, it's not cheap at all.
They're spending $20,000, you know, to show up. And last year, not a lot of people, well, this year, I keep saying last year, the last NAMM event, not a lot of people showed up. I mean, there were YouTube personalities there, and there were definitely some people there that were interested in making legitimate deals, which is what the NAMM show is all about. You know, if you're a guitar store, you go to NAMM and you're like, hey, I've never heard of this brand before. Let me try out their instruments. Wow, they're amazing. Can I start carrying your instruments in my shop? Sure, you can. This is our deal. And that's what these events were really made for. And then it got sensationalized over the past, 5 or 6 years, to where it's like a celebrity event now. And everybody goes to see Ola England and Rob Chapman and all of that stuff.
Yeah. It kind of became more of a... It got too far away from its core point. But that's always going to be the case, I think, with trade shows, not just with guitars and music. It's happened. I've seen it in the tech industry as well. Like, I used to go to trade shows with a magazine I worked on years ago, and every year I went, it was in Barcelona. I go every February, and every subsequent year, it would get smaller, and there'd be less people there. Not less people, but less stands. And then I don't know what it's like now, but it was sort of decreasing in size with brands going, because they just realized that, well, we have, say if you're, I don't know, let's use the example of ESP, and you've got 100, 300,000, 400,000 Instagram followers and 400,000 people on Facebook, and you've got tens of thousands of people on your email list, and you've got people coming to your website, and you've got your Twitter. So if you release a new guitar, you just put it out on that and everyone sees it. And it gets shared around, and then other people see it, and then sites like us write about it. So the idea that you need to be at some physical location to see something, like the exclusivity, just isn't there anymore, because the internet's kind of changed the game. It's almost like, doing business by correspondence through letters in nowadays. It's just silly. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to, if you want to deal with us, you need to send us a letter, because that's how we do deals. It's just silly. It's just not going to work that way. And while it's quite sad, it's also not necessarily a bad thing, because when you have events like this, like, a lot of brands might be holding back on stuff, like, we've got to wait for NAMM, whereas now they just be like, nah, screw it, let's get it out. So there's less waiting around.
That's funny, because I was just praising Schecter. What was it? Maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, we were talking about new Schecter models almost every single week on the podcast, because they've been drip feeding everything throughout the year. And I was praising what a good business model that is, because they're not going to NAMM anymore. They quit. Because why would you? when you can just drip feed on your Instagram like that. And now everybody's waiting for the next Schecter guitar to be released. The last ones were the cold chamber guitars, I think.
Yeah.
And
correct.
Everybody got super excited about that. Like, wow, those are super cool guitars. And now we're waiting for the next ones. So it's a better strategy, but at the same time, I don't know. I kind of miss.
Well, the thing with NAMM is something like that is it needs to just go back to being what it is. Like if you want it to be like almost like a Comic-Con style event, I guess that's kind of what it needs to be, because that's seemingly what it's kind of turned into, if you know what I mean.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, exactly. Make it like a Comic-Con where brands show up. But I mean, is that worth it for the brands then? You know, like if someone like Ibanez or ESP or Fender, who have, 100 new colors this year with the same model, but because Fender hasn't ever changed anything really, but they have new colors. So is it worth it to go?
Probably not. No, I mean, it's a tricky one to do because it would just be purely just like a branding exercise. So here's we're Fender and here's our guitarist, and then you have to persuade all the artists to come down, then you have to pay them, and then you have to kind of get people to come in. So it probably doesn't really work, because what makes Comic-Con so... I mean, I've never been to one, but I kind of get how it works, is that, you get all the older... The majority of the people there are kind of like the guys that haven't worked for 20 years that are in Star Trek Discovery or whatever, and they kind of hang around and you can meet them and say hello and get your picture taken and stuff. So that doesn't really lend itself that well to like guitars or that kind of thing. But I don't know. It's a weird one, I think, because the nature of the business is different and it's heavily reliant on logistics as well, because if you've got to transport, like you say, thousands of guitars around the country, it's not exactly cheap. So if they're just like, look, we can just get rid of this whole logistics cost, get rid of all these lorries, get rid of all these containers, not spend $20,000 a day on this stall, and we can put that $20,000 into, PPC ads, sponsoring some content on TikTok or Instagram.
That's $20,000 worth of guitars that you sent to guitar reviewers.
Yeah, it's just money. It's just making your money go a lot further, I think. So it's one of those things. Because somebody who spent like a lot of time going to trade shows, like about 10 years ago. I mean, I don't think I'd be sad to see the back of them, to be honest, because it's just, a lot of the time it's just a bit of one big circle jerk. But I haven't been to a guitar one though, and it'd be quite nice because you get to go to a guitar and you can see the guitars, sit down, play them. Maybe see someone who like some well-known guitarist doing some like demos and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, it's super cool, and that's what I'm saying. That's kind of the aspect that I'll miss. But I don't know. Maybe they can replace it with something else that is just as exciting. I don't know. Maybe just have the artists there. And
what's the one that they do? What's that one they do on a boat? It's like a boat, and there's just bands, and it's on a boat, and they just go around.
There's several, but there's one
that
called...
sounds like the coolest thing I've ever heard of in my life. I don't even like boats, but I go on that.
There's one called 20 Tons of Metal, which is pretty cool. Right. I think they had like Judas Priest, and I don't know, they had a bunch of bands, and like it's pretty much a non-stop metal concert on a cruise ship.
Oh my god, sounds like heaven. Sounds like the concept of a really good horror film, like the start of a really good horror film as well.
And some of these bands haven't played together for years. I think like Saxon and like Testament was there last time or something. Like it's kind of a pretty big deal. Yeah.
That's cool as well. And it's also such a finite thing as well, because there's only so many rooms on a cruise ship. So you basically like, this is how many people we have. This is how much food we need. This is how much booze we need. There you go. Well, it's probably easier to plan than like a festival and like an outdoor area on land. And there's maritime law as well, so you can potentially shoot people. It's maritime law. I don't know, something about it's off Arrested Development, isn't it? Maritime law. It's
oh my god!
You can get away with a lot. You can get away with a lot with maritime law, so it's fine. Different rules at sea. Yeah,
I guess NAMM for now is going to be relegated to being a January event. I guess they're going to try this NAMM Next thing, and they'll see how it does. this summer. I still might go. I mean, I don't know.
It's just a big ask, I guess, for it, because the whole thing is contingent on it being lots of good big guitar brands there, and if they're not seeing any return on investment from doing it, or they're seeing diminishing returns year on year versus places where they're spending things spending money in other places like on social media or email or just content, then you can't really expect them to do it just for the just like it's NAMM, we have to do it sort of thing.
So yeah, I guess NAMM is like going to be relegated to being a January event from now on, and I guess we'll see how this works out with the hotel and convention style thing. But I don't know, I picture someone standing there on like a PowerPoint stage, and like going through slides like, boss, we got 2 new pedals coming out this year, and that's like in a crappy hotel convention room or something.
Yeah.
That's what I see it as being. And I've been to those before, like at the Florida Music Festival. Every year we did the music festival, they had little workshops that they kind of con you into doing. And I don't know, it's pretty cool. I got to meet Hayley Williams before she was famous, right before Paramore took off. But all of those little sit-ins were like, I don't know, they felt scammy, and it's like, buy something. It was like going to, what are they called? Timeshares. It's like the timeshare events where it's like free dinner on us.
Yeah.
From this Roadhouse. And then you show, and it's a timeshare.
But I guess like, the point is like with NAMM though, is if it is a place for people to meet and do deals, then, and people are now doing deals in different ways, its kind of core solution is no longer viable. It doesn't do it anymore, or even if they do it, but there's an easier way to do it, then it's a tricky one, because big brands will just go, we'll get more mileage from sponsoring like a festival, or a channel, or sending a guitar to a well-known YouTuber. It's just that's just business. Things evolve, don't they? They change, they move on. So it's easier for brands to do that. And now we live in the age of AI, where effectively with, this isn't the case now, but in maybe 12 months time, when the proper shit-hot SEOs who work for these big companies, big guitar companies, get a handle on how the AI overuse things work, then you can start gaming that and just getting, tenfold click-through rates to your product pages, because you won't even need reviews. The Google, for some godforsaken reason now, when you search for a review of a product, it will literally link you to the actual manufacturer of the product for a review. And I'm just like, what? On what planet does that make any sense? Like, as if somebody, Fender, who makes its own guitar, is going to give it a bad review. But this happens, this is like a thing now. So it's like journalists or anyone who has like a critical angle, or basically anyone who Google can't make money out of, is now being kind of just squeezed out the equation, because it's like, well, I can't make money from you, so why are you here? Fender's going to pay me loads of money in ads, so they can stay. It's a very odd time to be doing anything, because everything's up in the air.
It is, but it feels transitional, if that makes any sense. Or maybe I'm just like a super optimistic person, but it feels like this is like a growing pain, and things are going to eventually smooth out.
I hope so, because it's very it seems like they're very, but the thing with AI is, and stuff like this, when you're messing around with it, it's a bit of a black box. You can't really get inside of it and make it do things. It's kind of got a mind of its own. It's not true AI, but the results are unpredictable. Like, what it'll spit out is unpredictable and often false. So
yeah, often
when
wrong.
You're plugging that into an information machine like Google, where people are looking for, like, for instance, if somebody used to Google like the Stratocaster review, right? We used to be position 1 or 3. We were quite high up because our review was really thorough. It covered every possible aspect of the guitar that you could think of. And it did really well, and people liked it. We used to get emails about it, being like, I was going to buy a Telecaster, but then I read your Stratocaster review, and I got one of them instead because you just explained it in a way that it made it clear that this was more my style of guitar. But now that's nowhere to be seen. So it's, we've been moved, and I think now you touched that there's some retailer sites where you can read reviews. So any critical point, so Google's taking user reviews of people from the forums and whatnot on Reddit. So you'll be reading, potentially, if you're looking to buy a guitar and it's not a brand new model, say it's something, an Ibanez from a few years ago, you'll probably, if you type that into Google to get a review of it, will be pushed to some aging subreddit that hasn't been, active in 5 years to read random doink's take on a guitar that he bought. So it's a real mess, and it plays too much into brands' hands. It's removing any level of criticism or critique from Google search, and that's not a good thing. That's just from a product review standpoint. So you taking something like current events and news, it gets even worse, because if Google's deciding what the official answers are, which it already kind of does anyway, but now it's going to do it emphatically with its AI overviews, then that's really like a Brave New World style scenario you've got going on there, because it will literally be controlling the narrative. It'll be deciding what isn't truth, take the jab, don't take the jab, it's just,
exactly.
It's too dark. It's too sinister. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's not a good time to be a journalist, though, put it that way.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's transitional. Like I said earlier, I think it's all going to kind of iron itself out when people realize, because, I saw that Apple's picked up on AI now too, and it's not as useful as you think it is, and it's fun when it's coming up with pictures and you type in something funny like Barack Obama on a unicorn shooting a machine gun, and stuff like that. It's funny, but I can see where that could be used nefariously also. And
yeah, totally. And that's before you get into the privacy stuff with it as well, which is massive.
There's already people falling for fake pictures on Facebook. I see it all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, you still got people getting scammed by princes from Nigeria who've got $10 million for them. So what the hell are those people going to do when they've got someone calling them up and it's a perfect, representation of Donald Trump on the other end of the phone being, hey, hello, talking to them. What are they going to do? They're just going to go with whatever he says. So
I got a story. It's a story about a shark. Have you ever heard about sharks? Sharks, they're huge. They're amazing animals. They're the best animals I've ever seen, but let me tell you something. The sharks, they're dangerous. They're dangerous.
Not as dangerous as me.
But not as dangerous as me, and that's why you need to give me $3,500. But yeah, no, it can get ridiculous. And speaking of, that's kind of our main topic today. I've seen 2 or 3 videos now, one by Katie H, as he calls himself. And he's in Ireland, and he's a kind of a mid-level YouTuber. He's famous for exposing Rob Chapman. He did this whole expose on why Rob Chapman's an awful person.
Why is he an awful person?
You should watch the video. It's very revealing. It doesn't make Rob look very good. He's kind of recovered from it, but
I was going to say, I keep seeing him popping up everywhere. So
it's a mean video, but he just put out one about Reverb scams, and the Reverb scams kind of disappeared for a while because it's pretty easy to spot them. Like if it's using the pictures from the manufacturer and the price is like $500 on a usual $1,500 guitar, that's clearly a scam. But they've gotten so good now to where they're like stealing pictures, and he breaks it all down. Maybe I'll link the video in the description.
Yeah, you probably should.
The podcast. Yeah, well,
for stealing his work for our podcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not really stealing his work. There's 10 or 12 YouTubers that have done videos.
Okay, well, we're shining the light on it. It's good. It's discovery. That's what the internet's about. You
yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting point, and then other people talk about it and add their own little take on it.
because these are easy to fall for, though. And I mean, like, maybe I would even fall for it. Looking at some of them, I mean, they're not using manufacturer pictures. They're using pictures that you get from Google. You know, when you
so what happens? You basically buy it, think it's a Gibson Les Paul, and they send you a chips in or something. Is that?
Or they send you nothing at all, and they just disappear.
Yeah, nothing. Oh, wow.
And the thing is, you know, Reverb has like this built-in, kind of like eBay, this built-in karma system to where you have to have positive reviews to be able to sell something. Yeah. Because I remember the first time I ever tried to sell a guitar on Reverb, I couldn't because I didn't have any feedback.
Okay. So how are they getting around that?
They're getting around that because there must be a group of them. There must be 20 or so of these guys doing this, and they all comment on each other's pages.
Oh, okay.
Where,
yeah, build up rep, and then they have to corrupt somebody with good karma, and then get them into the pyramid scheme. Join us.
Which is why it's easy to fall for it. Yeah, it's easy to fall for it because you look at it and you say, oh, that price is too good to be true. But then you look at the dealer and it's called Dave's Guitar Emporium. And Dave's Guitar Emporium, well, he has 11 good sales, 5 stars.
Yeah. And also with guitars as well, it's one of those things. It's quite nuanced market. There's a lot of factors that if you're just getting into it, you probably just wouldn't know. Like even like things like brands and different models. Like you might go, I want an SG. And you'd be like, well, that one's $5,000 and this one's £200. What's the difference? And this one's like $1,200, so that's probably okay. So do you know what I mean? There's a lot of places where you could slip up. So if you're a scammer, that's the kind of perfect market to operate in because there's a level of confusion and just brand unawareness that's happening on quite a large level.
Right.
And
if you don't know guitars, I mean, can you tell the difference between an Epiphone SG that sells for $599 compared to a Gibson SG that's $5,000? I mean, just looking at the body of both of those guitars, they look extremely similar.
Yeah.
So how would you even know?
Exactly. So has anyone been burnt by this, or is it kind of an ongoing thing, or has there only been some real big ones or anything juicy?
I don't think anyone's been burned by it. I think as far as the guitar community goes, I think people have seen enough videos on it now to be like, it's a thing. It's a thing, yeah. Yeah.
So who owns Reverb? Are they owned by a large company or are they private?
They're a private company, from what I understand. Okay. So I think you can pay with PayPal with Reverb, though, so that would be easy to reverse the transaction if you get scammed. I mean, that's kind of what PayPal is good for.
This is something I was thinking of doing on the site, because I've got this software that I've been messing around with, and it would give you the ability to effectively create like a kind of like a trade platform. So if you've got gear, say you've got like something you want to sell, this is basically like a selling platform, so people can connect with each other and sell stuff, like one-to-one sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
kind of like again, Facebook Marketplace.
Kind of like that, yeah, but just specifically for, maybe that's something we'll do, because we are in the process of building an actual kind of like community segment of the site, so it'd live off the main site, and it'd effectively be like a social media platform within the site itself. And so that may be something we can do with that further down the line. But it's interesting because there's a lot of people that have lots of gear and they want to trade it, and your options are, Reverb or eBay and stuff like that, which obviously you're tapping into bigger markets. But I just think sometimes, particularly with stuff like guitars and gear, is if you've got a smaller group of people who are kind of interested in the same thing, it's almost nicer to know that your gear's going to someone that's, you kind of chatted to, if you know what I mean. And there's less incentive to rip people off, because if you're selling within a community of people that you are part of, you're not going to, I say most people wouldn't rip somebody off, but then, people love ripping people off all the time. So, there's something that we're thinking about, but I don't know. I don't know how the scale and how long it would take, but I'm sure there's a lot of moving parts with something like that. So,
and you have to vet people. I mean, 7string.org. If you've ever been to 7string.org, which is an old website. Yeah. maybe 12 or 15 years ago, that's how we used to get 7-string guitars, is we would all trade with each other. But it was like on the honor system, you know?
Yeah.
And nobody really got burned, which was strange.
Well, that's the thing. That's the community ties thing I was talking about. If it's a relatively close-knit community of people, even if it's in the thousands, but everyone kind of polices themselves and new people are vetted and kind of people keep an eye on them, and they're not, because that's the thing. Once you get to a few thousand people is manageable, but once you get into like millions and tens of millions, like on Facebook Marketplace, it's just you can't police that. You can't manage it. There's too many.
Which is why there's so many scams.
Exactly. So.
Yep.
Which is why going back to a sort of a smaller kind of community-driven trading platforms might be better. But then I'd say Reverb's probably not that big in comparison to something like Facebook Marketplace. And Facebook Marketplace is such a crapshoot anyway. Like I've seen people put in like Squire bullet guitars on there for like 400 quid, and I'm like, come on, dude, they're like 129 quid new. What are you doing?
Right.
And it's like in the description, like, this immaculate Fender guitar has never been played. And it's like, it's not even a Fender. It literally says Squire on the headstock. So
and they spell it wrong every time.
Yeah. So you get some weird ones. I mean, I bought my Tokai off Facebook Marketplace, and I think I paid a little bit too much for it. But that was about 5-6 years ago. But you know, live and learn, don't you?
Yeah.
Because at the time, I didn't know there was a difference. The Tokai made in Japan versus the Tokai made in China. So I thought, oh, right. And I was reading like Tokai, because I'd never heard of them. And it seemed to look like a nice guitar. So I did a little bit of reading on the brand, and everyone was like, yeah, Tokai guitars are great. You know, oh, wow. You know, cheaper than a Fender, cheaper than a Gibson, plays just as well. And I was like, wow, sold. And me being the impulsive bastard that I am, I just went and bought it. And then, after the fact, as is always the case, I found out that if you do buy a Tokai guitar, you need to check if it's one made in Japan or one made in, you know, China or wherever else. And you'll be able to find out by checking the headstock. And lo and behold, mine was made in China. So, long story short, do your due diligence.
The Japanese ones they rival a Les Paul. Easy.
Yeah, they also rival it in price. So nowadays, they're quite expensive.
Nowadays, yeah.
I mean,
I don't know, 10 years ago, you could find a good Tokai for like, I don't know, $600 or $700. And that was a really good deal. Same thing with the Lawsuit Ibanez guitars that look like Les Pauls. Those were going around. But I don't know, even Reverb now, where it used to have really interesting stuff, it's kind of a cesspool.
It always is, though. Once you get to critical mass, you get enough people in there, eventually it just turns into... Too many humans just turn everything into a cesspool. Like, it's just the way it is.
They let dealers on there. So people like Sweetwater and Guitar Center and stuff like that can sell used gear there now, too. And new gear, which they don't need. They already have a website. And the whole thing about Reverb and what made it cool is it wasn't bought from a store. It was bought from someone who had owned the instrument. And now it's, you know, you see Sweetwater spamming it. You see Guitar Center just spamming stuff on there. And
just another marketing channel. Yeah, it's just kind of loses the magic and the community.
It seems like every online platform, and this is like 4 weeks of us talking about this now. It seems like every online platform starts out like that. Like, this is really super cool, and then it suddenly devolves into...
But that's the nature of anything.
Crap.
Like, so it does. That's what happens. So basically, you start something, solve a problem, people like it, more people hear about it, more people pile in. 10 years goes by, then it's massive. The original founders probably sold it and got out, because that's what you do. And then it's taken over by usually a Chinese company or some big tech conglomerate. And then it just becomes just a money printing machine. And then they just basically rinse it for all it's worth. That happens to everything. It happens to Spotify, Google,
YouTube,
you know, Instagram.
Literally everything.
Just name something that was like innovative
Facebook.
and hip, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it will have got by now, if it's still around and popular, it will be awful. Because that's just the way it is. Because you can't, it's just more and more people. Just grow. Like Netflix. Netflix is such a good example of this. Because in the UK, Netflix has always kind of sucked compared to the US version. Because the US version had everything. And in the UK, it was really limited. Like I remember when I used to go to the States a lot, and I'd just log into Netflix on my tablet and be like, "Oh my god!" It's like the motherland. It's like everything's on here, like The Walking Dead, like it's loads of stuff. And you go back to the UK, and it's like 10 things on there. And you used to be able to get around it with a VPN, so you could log in with a VPN, set it to America, and you could access American Netflix. But then they stopped doing that. They started blocking VPNs because they're dickheads, and. But they always had the emphasis. I remember the CEO at the time said, "We want to be the HBO of streaming before HBO can do what we're doing effectively." And they kind of did House of Cards, and then they had all these, Better Call Saul, and these big shows that they were doing and films that they were developing. But now they've got this. Now they've got to this kind of like critical mass. They kind of started doing stuff that they kind of went against initially. Like I don't know if you have it in America, but in the UK. All the most popular shows on Netflix are like these just stupid, like cheap to make reality TV shows. They're just idiotic. Yep. Like Love Is Blind or whatever, the one where they just basically two people go in the rooms and they don't see each other, and then they have to like talk through the wall and fall in love just by talking, but they're all exactly the same level of attractiveness. There isn't like. They haven't like thrown in a couple of fatties in there or, some guy missing half his face. It's always just like super attractive people in a room separated by walls, and they're all talking to each other. And then they all come out and be like, well, yeah, we all look the same. We're all like solid 8s. So, yeah, of course we're going to get married. It's so stupid. It's so inane. And
it is
because it's cheap. That's what they're doing now, because it's cheap and people love it. So
they recently put one out, and I'm not kidding you at all. They recently put one out where no one speaks the same language. So it's a bunch of American dudes and a bunch of girls who are from foreign countries and know like 3 words of English.
What do they have to do?
And then they see if they could fall in love.
Oh my God. So yeah, but that probably costs like nothing to make because there's no actors in it. You don't have to pay anybody to be in it. You just have to have some set, which they've probably already got. And then you just stick some doinks in there and film it. That's it.
I think they use the same sets for all of those. I think it's like a private place in like Hawaii or something, or maybe in California.
Or then another one where you have to guess if something's a cake or not. I mean, come on. Like, who cares? It's either a cake or it isn't. I don't give a shit. Like, I couldn't care less if that cup is a cake. Unless I'm going to drink out of it, it's completely irrelevant. It's really weird, but that's what I mean. It just the standards just go down, the quality goes down, and then it becomes like it's printing money. And how do we keep the same amount of money and the same subscribers we got and make more money by reducing the cost, which means stop spending loads of money on, really good shows and really good content. It's really annoying. And they haven't had a really good series for ages, like a really good one for like that I can think of for a good, like a big global. Well, they had Squid Game, but that was kind of a while ago now, wasn't it?
3 Body Problem was excellent.
If you've read
the books. Yeah, but I just pulled up my Netflix on my computer, and so the first thing is Married at First Sight. Then we have Love Is Blind. We have Zillow Gone Wild. I don't know if that's from the Reddit forum, Zillow Gone Wild, where it's like weird houses.
No idea.
Where what?
They got Godzilla minus one, didn't they?
Yeah, that's up there too.
That was good.
I really want to watch that.
Have you not seen it yet?
No.
Oh, it's really good.
My brother keeps telling me to watch it.
No, it's really. I mean, I'm not a particularly big fan of Godzilla films, really. I mean, they're all right. I'll watch it if I'm like hungover and I've got nothing to do and I'm bored. But it's just a really good film, like a really, really, really good film in itself. And it only cost $15 million to make, which when you watch it, you'll be blown away considering I think they spent $380 million to make the latest Marvel film, which was utter balls.
Oh yeah, that last Spider-Man movie, Madam Web. It cost
Yeah.
like $180 million to make.
Yeah, this was 15 million. Like, just watch it. It's because the special effects in it are incredible as well. It's a lot of it's like some of it's practical, but particularly the Godzilla himself is the bits in the ocean and the sea. It's amazing. I can't believe they spent 15 million on it. But it just goes to show you can do a lot with a lot of money, because $15 million is a lot of money. And you can also you can do very little with an absolute metric ton of money, like any of the new Marvel films that have come out, which cost hundreds and hundreds of millions. So,
and that's the moral of the story today, kids. Be careful with your money.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to reverb scams. If you see a Gibson Les Paul that's usually $2,500 and it's $1,500 on reverb, it's probably not real. So make sure
you
you
get a list of these scammers.
Check everything. Well, that's the thing. They disappear before.
Like British
you can
builders.
actually log it, you know?
Like builders in the UK.
I was about to say, that's like construction workers here too.
Yeah, literally.
Still a thing.
Yeah, take your money and leg it. Yeah, we can do it. 20 grand. Cash up front.
My kitchen is half finished, so you guys coming back? But yeah, that's the moral of the story. Moral of the story today is everything that's good eventually turns to crap when it comes to business models, and be careful with your money.
Yeah, totally.
And maybe next week
Godzilla -1.
Yeah, there we go. There's a positive. I was about to say we've got.
That's a huge positive. It really is, because it shows
positive.
Because it shows you can do like a film that looks like a high budget film for not that much money, really. I mean, $50 million. I think Grown Ups cost $30 million to make, the Adam Sandler film. So that cost twice as much.
That's nothing in Hollywood. Yeah,
no, it's not.
Exactly.
But that's the attitude. That it's like, oh, it's nothing. You know, it's $15 million. It's like, and oh, it's nothing. You know, we spent $100 million on this, and it's going to be great. And they kind of lose where these guys were like, we're going to make the story really good. The directors were both practical effects guys. That's their backgrounds. They knew what they were doing there, and they used actors who were just up and coming. And they made a film that was, I think, nominated for Best Foreign Picture and won loads of awards, and is actually really good. But the reason why it was so good is because it doesn't focus on the effects. It focuses more on the story and the characters. It goes back to, like, that's what a film is about, which people seem to have forgotten about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole different conversation. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So yeah, look out for reverb scammers, and we will see you guys next week.
It's just really good film. It's like, I mean, I read all the hype, so I went into it thinking this better be amazing after all the crap I've read about it. And it is really, really, really good.